What's up, guys? So if you're new here, I am Ryan. This is the Ryan Vibes YouTube channel. And if you like the content, we do all types of car content. So hit that subscribe button. And then after you hit the subscribe button, click on the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post a video. Somebody had messaged me about the video I posted, my top 5 favorite cars. If you haven't checked that video out, I'll link it in the description box. You guys go check that out. But in the video, it was all import cars except for the honorable mention of the Chrysler 300, the 2006 all-wheel drive model. But their question was, how am I a fan of all import vehicles and don't own any import vehicles? Because right now I have the 2008 Crown Vic, the 2004 300, and a Ford Expedition. So people were asking how, his question was how do I own all American vehicles and not have an import, but my entire list was all imports. And so I figured I'll make a video to answer that question, because there's probably going to be more people wondering that same thing. So this will kind of answer everybody's question all at once. So kicking this off right now, it is 2019. It is July of 2019, June of 2019. Sorry, got my months all kinds of mixed up. It's about to be July. So go back about 2.5 years to the beginning of 2017. I was on the market for a car or vehicle. I was driving a Saturn Ion Redline at the time, 5-speed. It's a fun little car. Granted, Saturn went out of business, what is it, 10 years now? 10 years ago now? Something like that, 10, 12 years. If you know how many years ago Saturn went out of business, leave it down in the comment section, because I'm not 100% sure. But I was driving Saturn Ion, and I was going to all these different dealerships looking for cars, and I started at the Nissan dealership, but nothing really was in my price range at the time. And then, so I started going to the mom and pop dealerships. I landed up at a mom and pop dealership in Nazareth, PA. For those of you that don't know Nazareth, PA, it's near like Allentown, Bethlehem area. Probably closer to Bethlehem than Allentown, but it's in that general vicinity. I went to this little mom and pop dealership. I had called them about an hour before I showed up there, and I spent about 4 or 5 hours at the dealership looking at vehicles. So when I got there, my first question to the guy was like, hey, I've got, $1,500. What do you have that I can buy outright for $1,500? Like, and get out on the road, or stuff that I can put $1,500 down and take it home. And the gentleman that owned the lot pointed me in the direction of a row of cars that were all between $700 and $1,500 down. Just drive it off the lot. It's all yours. $700 to $1,500 outright. So I went and checked out that section of the lot. He had a Ford Expedition there, a Ford Explorer in there. Both were really high mileage, so I kind of skipped over those. He had a GMC Jimmy, which I knew a couple people that had them, and there wasn't many great reviews on them from the few people I knew that owned them. So, and you see them on Facebook all the time for like $400, $500. So this guy was selling it for $7. It had low mileage-ish. It was only like 95,000, 100,000 miles on it, but I skipped it. And then I continued walking around after that, and I saw a Nissan Xterra. Now, this would have been the car I bought from this guy. Like, I would have totally bought this Xterra from him, but I test drove it, no problem on the test drive. The brakes were a little touchy, so it might have just needed the brakes bled or new pads. And then I went inside after test driving, because I was like, I just need new brakes. Maybe we'll get him to see if he'll do a brake job for me. as a part of the purchase. Now, granted, the Nissan was $1,200 down, and then obviously you'd have to get approved for the loan and figure out what your payments would be and all that. But I went inside, I went to get the Carfax before I even said anything to the guy. I asked him for the Carfax before I mentioned the brakes, before anything else. And he gave me the Carfax, and then I kind of sat there for a minute and I flipped through the pages, kind of looked at everything. And it was inspected until June of that year, so June 2017. And it had 100,000 miles, 102,000 miles on it, on the odometer in the vehicle. Now, at the end of the Carfax, it had the inspection from June of 2016 getting inspected, and according to the Carfax sheet, it had 191,000 miles on it. So I know what you're thinking. 189,000 mile difference is, or an 89,000 mile difference is a big difference. I thought the same thing. So then I had brought this up to his attention. I was like, hey, this here says it has 191,000, and the odometer in the vehicle says 100,000, 102,000. And he's like, well, if you want, just go out and check the VIN number. Maybe they put the VIN number in wrong. Sometimes, you know, you get lucky, whatever. So I went out, checked the VIN number. The VIN number was the same. So now that went out the window, because I'm not going to buy a car where we don't know what the actual mileage is, because that means somebody fucked around with it. Either the guys at the shop, which they were pretty good, they didn't seem shady at all. They answered all my questions. They didn't hide the Carfax. Like, if the place would have changed the miles themselves, they probably wouldn't have given me the Carfax. They'd have been like, well, you can print it out yourself or something. But they were totally open about it. They told me to go check the VIN number, whatever. They gave me the Carfax. And yeah, so that ended up not working out. So then I went back out onto the lot and I kept strolling around. And then I looked at a Cadillac Escalade, but I knew somebody with one and the transmission went on him. Then he got it replaced, and then the transmission went again. And he only had like 180,000 miles on that one, so I kind of skipped over that one. And then there was a couple of Jeeps. The one had the 4.0 V6, or is it the 4.0 straight 6? But it's a bulletproof motor. Only downside was it had 200,000 miles. It was only like $800 out the door, but I didn't want something with 200,000 miles, because I drive about 1,000 miles a week as it is. So to put 4,000 miles a month on something with 200,000 miles already, it's kind of risque, if you ask me. But then I kept looking, and there was a couple other things. There was a Trailblazer. There was a Nissan Rogue, which I skipped over because it had a dent. And then, like, I was getting to the last row, and I saw the Crown Victoria just sticking out. Like, the front headlights were sticking out from the rest of the cars. So I went, oh shit, look, there's a Crown Vic. And at the time, a friend of mine had a Crown Vic, or was just getting rid of a Crown Vic, one way or the other. So I went to look at the Crown Vic, because the second I saw it, I was like, ah, looks like a newer one. It ended up being my 08 Ford Crown Vic. Now, when I looked at it, the only thing I could notice the problem was it had some paint damage. I did end up taking it for a test drive. The AC didn't work, which, you know, that's not a deal breaker. All the window motors worked, all the windows worked, the trunk button worked. It ran, drive, it idled fine. It only had 105,000 miles on it when I was test driving it. And I found some old detective cards in the glove box and stuff. So it was owned by a police detective. So I had no issue in trying to buy this vehicle, because I knew it was owned by a police detective, and they usually take really, really, really good care of their vehicles. So then I went inside and I asked him about the Crown Vic, and he tells me, well, we literally just got the Crown Vic in maybe 2 days ago. My guys haven't had time to look over it. I don't have the Carfax printed out yet, but if you're definitely interested, you know, we can get it printed out and check it out, whatever. And I was like, yeah, well, I definitely want to check out the Carfax, because I don't purchase a vehicle without looking at the Carfax, ever. Unless I'm buying from a private dealer, like if I'm buying from a person on Facebook, then the Carfax app, it's like $35 or $40, and you get 3 Carfaxes. So if I'm gonna buy a vehicle from somebody on Facebook and they don't have the Carfax, I can get it relatively quick on my own. But yeah, he said he could print the Carfax out, and then I went back out because he said it was gonna take a few minutes to print out, no problem, whatever. So I went back out and went to stroll around the lot a little bit more, and he came out to get me, and he's like, I'll tell you what, here's a Carfax. So I looked at the Carfax, and then he's like, well, if you want, why don't you take this home tonight, drive it around a little bit more, see how you feel. Because at that point I had test drove in like 4 or 5 cars, checked the Carfax on 4 or 5 cars, and the Crown Vic would have made the 6th. So I guess he was trying to get the sale done and whatever. So he told me to take it home for the night, see what I think. No problem, whatever. And then I ended up taking it home. I did like 70 miles that night, driving it around, and ended up going back the next day and buying it. Now, had that Nissan Xterra been good, I probably would have bought that. But it wasn't. And if that Nissan Rogue didn't have a dent in it, I probably would have got that too. But it did. So that's how I ended up with the Crown Vic. And then recently I bought the Chrysler 300. That was back in February, late February, first week of March. There was a dealership, one of my sisters, or 2 of my sisters bought vehicles there already, and my one sister's fiance knew the owner of the dealership. So that helped me get in there a little bit quicker. So I went there, I told him flat out, look, this is what I have. What do you have that's in that price range? And they pointed out 3 or 4 cars. One of them was the Chrysler 300. There was a Hyundai Elantra, a Ford Fiesta, a Dodge Caliber, and like a Mercury Sable, and like 2 other vehicles. I don't remember what they were. I did end up test driving 2 or 3 of the cars, the 300 being one of them. And the only problem I had with the 300 when I test drove it was the power locks didn't work at all. So it probably needed a new motor. And this window was off the track. So, and it needed a new battery. So, the guy that was at the lot at the time called his boss, because I told him I'm interested in the 300, but I want them to replace the battery, replace the motor in the lock and unlock switch on the driver's side, and put the window back on the track. So, and then I was like, if you guys can do that, I'll buy the car, no problem. Now, these guys were pretty simple. The boss is like, all right, hang on 1 second, and you can hear him flipping through papers and stuff. I guess he was looking up the price of what he had bought the car for. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. All right, cool. So then I ended up buying the Chrysler 300 from that dealership. They replaced the battery, and they did the window motor, and they put the window back on the track. So, granted, they didn't have any imports on I guess the Hyundai was kind of an import, but it didn't really have enough room for me comfortably. I mean, it was a 5-speed, which is fine, I can drive stick, but it just didn't have enough room. But yeah, so that's how I ended up with the 300. Now, had they had an import, and I was going to buy a Toyota before I looked at the 300. There was a guy on Facebook selling a 5-speed Toyota Camry with 150,000 miles on it for like $700 or $800. And I told him if it passed inspection, I would buy it, because it was out-of-date inspection, and in the state of Pennsylvania, it has to have a valid inspection to be purchased, or it has to get inspected after purchase. So I made sure that this guy went to go take it for an inspection before I went to go buy it, and it ended up failing. And then there was another guy with a Honda. We couldn't get it started. We tried to jump it. He had an extra battery, and the battery still wouldn't start it, so it probably needed a lot of work. So we skipped it, and then I ended up going to the dealership to buy the 300. So that's how I landed up with the 300 and the Ford. And then, yeah. So soon, sometime the end of this year, I plan on buying a vehicle, a project car, probably a Honda wagon, so we can engine swap it, put a K-Series engine in it and stuff. But that's towards the end of the year. I gotta save the money up and that. So yeah, if anybody was wondering why my top 5 are all imports and why I own only Americans, there you go. So also, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and click on the little bell so you get notified every time I post a video, because we want you guys to all stay in the loop with the videos. And then also, all my social media is in the description box, so Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. So you guys can go add me on those, or follow us on Instagram and add us on Snapchat and add me on Facebook. And I'll see you guys in the next video.